If you think Christmas Eve has always been glittering lights, full fridges, and parcels stacked like towers, let me take you back to Britain in the 1970s. Not the postcard Britain, not the one in adverts, the Britain where winter didn't feel like a season. It felt like a wait. It's late afternoon, and the sky has already turned the color of wet slate. Street lamps hum to life over a row of terraced houses, their windows glowing faintly through breath-fogged glass. The pavement shines with rain that never fully stops, and every gust of wind carries the smell of coal smoke, damp wool, and cold metal. Inside one of those houses, the hallway is narrow, the wallpaper slightly peeling at the edges where years of hands have brushed past. There's a coat rack packed too tightly, shoes lined like soldiers at the skirting board, and a small living room where a gas heater ticks in the corner, as if counting something down. On the carpet sits a boy named Jamie, 8 years old, with hair that never quite stays combed, and a jumper his mom has mended twice already. He's not whining. He's not asking for much. He's just staring at the Christmas tree like it might explain something. It's not a grand tree. It's modest, a little lopsided, the kind that sheds needles if you look at it wrong. The decorations are simple, paper chains made at school, a few baubles that have survived more years than anyone wants to admit, and a single strand of lights that blink with the stubbornness of something refusing to give up. At the top, a cardboard star leans slightly to the left. Jamie's mum, Margaret, stands in the doorway to the kitchen and watches him for a moment. She's tired in a way that sleep doesn't fix. Her dress is plain, her hands are red from washing and scrubbing, and the skin around her nails is cracked. On the table behind her is a list written in pencil, the words pressed too hard into the paper. Milk, bread, coal, a small tin of biscuits if the shop still has any. Something for Jamie. Something. In the 1970s, there were families who didn't speak about money because speaking about it didn't make it appear. There were weeks where the coins in your pocket sounded louder than your own thoughts, and there were Christmases where the magic wasn't in what you had. It was in what you could pretend you had for a few hours, for a child. Margaret turns back to the kitchen. On the counter sits a kettle, a tin of tea, and a plate with the last 2 slices of bread. The cupboards are neat because neatness is the only thing she can still control. On the stove, a pot of potatoes simmers quietly, and beside it a pan with a thin layer of gravy, stretched further than it should be. She checks the clock again. 5:40. He'll come soon, she tells herself. He has to, because he promised. The front door rattles suddenly, not with a key, but with the wind. Margaret flinches anyway. She keeps doing that now. Flinching, waiting. Is Dad coming? Jamie calls without turning his head. Margaret swallows. He said he would, she answers. He said he would. And in her voice there's something careful, not hopeful. Careful. For a moment, Jamie nods, as if he's been handed a fact. Then he looks down at the paper chain he's holding and starts adding another loop, slowly, like patience can be built from colored strips. The house is warm in patches, near the heater, near the oven, near Margaret's hands when she brushes Jamie's hair back and tells him he's the most handsome boy in Britain. But everywhere else the cold waits, in corners, under doors, inside the window panes that sweat with the breath of the room. At 6:15 there's a knock. Not the sharp knock of a postman, not the cheerful knock of a neighbor. A softer one, a hesitant one, like someone doesn't want to be heard. Margaret wipes her hands on a tea towel and opens the door. A man stands there, shoulders hunched against the cold, hat pulled low. He's older than Margaret by at least 10 years, his cheeks lined, his coat worn at the cuffs. His name is Mr. Pritchard, and he used to work with Margaret's husband at the factory before the layoffs, before everything started changing, before the promises started sounding like wishes. He holds a small paper bag, the kind you'd get from a corner shop. Evening, he says, voice rough. Sorry, I wasn't sure. Margaret's eyes flick to the street behind him, instinctively searching for someone else, for the familiar shape of her husband's shoulders, for the sound of his laugh, for anything that would make this moment normal. But there's only rain and streetlight. Come in, she says quietly. Mr. Pritchard steps inside, awkward, as if the warmth itself makes him feel guilty. He takes off his hat, glances at the small tree, the paper chains, the room that's trying its best. Jamie looks up from the carpet. Who's that? He asks, blunt in the way children are when adults are busy lying. That's Mr. Pritchard, Margaret says. He's a friend. Mr. Pritchard gives a careful smile. All right, lad, he says. Merry Christmas Eve. Jamie's eyes narrow a little. Not suspicious, just measuring. Is Dad with you? He asks. The air changes. Margaret feels it in her chest first, like the room has tightened. Mr. Pritchard looks down at his shoes. Margaret answers quickly. Too quickly. He's held up. Jamie nods again, but slower this time. Mr. Pritchard clears his throat and lifts the bag. I brought a few things, he says. Nothing much. Shop had, well, you know. Margaret takes the bag and peeks inside. A small tin of biscuits, a bar of chocolate, 2 oranges. Oranges. To some people, oranges are ordinary. To Jamie's eyes, they might as well be gold. His face lights up before he can stop it. Are those for us? He breathes. Mr. Pritchard's smile wobbles like it's trying not to turn into something else. He says, for you. Jamie takes 1 orange in both hands and turns it like it's a miracle. He presses it to his nose and inhales, eyes closing. The smell is bright and sharp and alive, like sunlight you can hold. Smells like summer, he says. Margaret turns away for a second, pretending she's checking the kettle because her eyes have suddenly filled and she refuses to let her son see it. Mr. Pritchard steps into the living room, still unsure where to put himself, like he's been invited into a story he doesn't belong in. He stands near the doorway, hands clasped together, looking at the tree and then at Margaret, as if waiting for permission to breathe. Margaret forces her voice steady. Tea? She asks. Only if you're having one, he says. She puts the kettle on. Jamie sits back down by the tree, orange still in his lap, and stares at the wrapped presents beneath the branches. There are only 2, both small, both wrapped in brown paper and tied with string. He counts them again anyway. At 7 o'clock, the phone rings, a shrill sound in a quiet house, like an alarm in the wrong dream. Margaret freezes. Her hand hovers in the air. Mr. Pritchard glances at her, and in his eyes is a question he doesn't dare ask. Margaret lifts the receiver. Hello, she says, voice thin. There's crackling on the line. A pause, then a man's voice, muffled, distant, tired. Margaret. Her chest tightens. Where are you? She whispers. Another pause, like he's choosing between truths. I'm at my brother's, he says. Margaret closes her eyes. Her husband isn't at his brother's. Not really. He's at the pub, or on someone's sofa, or somewhere he doesn't want to name because naming it would make it real. He's been at his brother's for weeks now, whenever the world feels too heavy and the shame is too loud. He's been at his brother's every time Jamie asks why Dad isn't smiling anymore. But tonight is Christmas Eve. Tonight was meant to be different. Are you coming home? Margaret asks, and even as she asks it, she hears something break inside her, softly, like a thread snapping. The line crackles again. His voice comes back, smaller. I can't, he says. Not tonight. Margaret grips the receiver so hard her knuckles whiten. You promised him, she says. I know, he says quickly. I know, I can't walk in there and look at him like this. I can't. Like what? Like a man who couldn't keep his job, like a man who couldn't keep his pride, like a man who couldn't even keep his promises on the one night of the year children believe adults can do anything. Margaret's throat closes. In the living room, Jamie has gone very still. He can hear everything. Children always can. Margaret forces her voice into something gentle, something that won't scare him. "All right," she says quietly into the phone. "All right." There's a moment where she could beg, where she could shout, where she could pour every fear and every anger into the line and hope it changes him. But she knows it won't. So she does the only thing she can do. She becomes calm. She becomes capable. She becomes the kind of mother who can carry a whole Christmas on her back and still smile. "Good night," she says. "Margaret," he starts, but she hangs up. For a second, the house is silent except for the gas heater clicking and the rain tapping the window. Jamie looks up at her. His eyes are too old for his face. "Is he coming?" he asks. Margaret walks into the living room and sits beside him on the carpet, right by the tree. She takes his hand, small and warm. She could lie. She could make him hope for another hour, another minute. But she looks at his face and decides he deserves one honest thing. "No," she says softly. "Not tonight." Jamie stares at the presents, and for a moment his mouth trembles. He tries not to cry. He tries to swallow it down like he's seen adults do, but then his voice breaks anyway. "Did I do something wrong?" Margaret's heart caves in. "Oh, Jamie," she whispers, pulling him into her arms so tight he squeaks. "No, no, love, never. This isn't you. This isn't because of you." Jamie's shoulders shake. Mr. Pritchard stands in the doorway, hands clenched, and you can see him fighting the urge to step away, to give them privacy, to not be part of this. But he doesn't move. He just watches, eyes glassy, as if he's seeing something he's carried for years. Margaret rocks Jamie gently, like she did when he was a baby. It's grown-up troubles," she says, voice trembling but steady. "Sometimes grown-ups get lost, but it's not your fault." Jamie sniffs, wipes his nose on his sleeve. "Can we still do Christmas?" he asks in a tiny voice. Margaret laughs once, a sound that almost becomes a sob, and then she nods. "Of course we can," she says. "We will. Because what else can you do? You make tea. You put the biscuits on a plate. You slice the oranges carefully so every segment looks like it belongs. You turn on the radio low so the room feels less empty. You take the world's disappointment and you fold it away like laundry so your child can breathe." Later, when Jamie is calmer, Margaret hands him one of the small presents and tells him to open it early, just this once. He peels the brown paper away slowly. Inside is a toy car, not shiny, not new, but clean and cared for, the kind you'd find at a jumble sale or passed down from someone else. The paint is chipped at the edges and one wheel squeaks. Jamie holds it like it's the best thing he's ever seen. "It's brilliant," he says, and for the first time all evening, he smiles properly. Margaret looks at Mr. Pritchard. He shifts awkwardly. "It was my lad's," he says quietly. Before he grew up, thought it might, well, thought it might make the night lighter." Margaret can't speak for a moment, because she understands what that means. It means Mr. Pritchard is not just giving a toy. He's giving a piece of his own past, a piece of warmth, a piece of something he knows can't be bought. Jamie starts pushing the car along the carpet, making soft engine noises under his breath, absorbed the way only children can be. The tree lights blink, the heater clicks, and the radio plays a Christmas song that sounds older than the room. Margaret watches her son, and a strange truth settles over her like a blanket. Christmas wasn't saved by a man coming home with a pay packet. It wasn't saved by perfect presents or overflowing tables. It was saved by small mercies. A tin of biscuits, 2 oranges, a battered toy car, a neighbor who knocked softly because he didn't want to intrude, but he couldn't stand the idea of a child sitting in the dark with a broken promise. Jamie eventually yawns and rubs his eyes. Margaret carries him upstairs, his toy car still clutched in his hand. She lays him down, pulls the thin blanket up to his chin, and watches his face soften as sleep takes him. Just before his eyes close fully, he whispers, half asleep, "Tell Dad. Merry Christmas anyway." Margaret's throat tightens so hard it hurts. "I will," she whispers back. Downstairs, Mr. Pritchard stands by the door again, hat in hand, looking like a man who's done something brave without meaning to. He hesitates, then says, almost embarrassed, "You're doing all right, you know." Margaret shakes her head, a tired smile forming. "I don't feel like I am," she admits. Mr. Pritchard nods, as if he understands more than she wants him to. "That's usually how you know you are," he says. Margaret opens the door for him and cold air rushes in, sharp and honest. Mr. Pritchard steps onto the wet pavement, then turns back. "Merry Christmas," he says. Not like a greeting, like a hope. Margaret watches him walk away under the street lamps, shoulders hunched, disappearing into rain and darkness. Then she closes the door, leans her forehead against it for one long moment, and breathes in the warmth of the house she is keeping together with nothing but will. Upstairs, her son sleeps with a toy car in his hand, dreaming of summer oranges and a Christmas that somehow still happened. And that's what Christmas Eve in 1970s Britain often was. Not a fairy tale, a quiet act of survival, a family holding on, and a child learning, far too early, that sometimes love looks like someone staying, even when someone else doesn't.